All right, welcome back to the show, Adam Kokesh. Great to see you, man. How you been?
Hey, outstanding. Thank you so much. It's beautiful to have another opportunity with you and to appreciate your production values and the effort you put into your independent production. I love
Well, I'm a giant IT nerd, so I'm gonna mess around
it.
every way I can.
You better,
Speaking
better live up to the hype.
speaking of messing around, I'm seeing you're wearing some kind of work outfit. So what were you doing today?
Oh yeah. Oh, it gets worse. This is like the neat part from the waist up. Yeah, no, we're just working in the shop building dome stuff. This is my new business, Big Igloo Geodesics, and I know you get the connotation there, Big Igloo, and it's kind of like our take on what it means to have a revolution, to do it by living independently, to do it by living off grid, to do it by living by your values and living unconventionally. And so today we're getting ready to launch formally. The business hasn't even been launched yet, and put our launch catalog together. Our initial offerings of 3 different sizes of geodesic domes and prices based on material costs and things like that. And then we've got a couple of cool products that we're adding. We wanted to show people what's possible with this building style. So today we did this art piece, and it's not done yet, but it's a geodesic ball, 4-foot sphere on a pedestal, 6 feet off the ground. So, and there's a lot more to it than that. I won't bore y'all with the details.
So,
I know you
so,
want to get into politics,
so
but
it's like perfectly spherical then?
yeah. And so this is, well, a geodesic. It's in triangular panels, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is my one hobby or set of hobbies outside of politics is homesteading and off-grid living and alternative construction, especially earthships and geodesic domes.
I'm super into that stuff. I didn't know you were into that stuff, and I'm like, for a while I was addicted to watching permaculture videos online where people grow food forests and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I've gone down some of those rabbit holes too, man. You can go forever. Like what we're doing here. So for people who don't know, I've been away from the garden here, the Garden of Freedom, a lot over the last 2 years, touring with the presidential campaign. But with coronaphobia, I get a little more time at home, and we were uh, being private about this place until about a year ago. The zoning department changed their enforcement to being complaint only. So if nobody complains about what you're doing on your property, they don't investigate for zoning violations out here. That's very nice. So we've been kind of waiting for a time to go public again. I've got this great logo now for the Garden of Freedom. And if you go, so my Instagram has it, and my main Instagram at Adam Kokesh, but we also set up an Instagram account for the Garden of Freedom and Big Igloo Geodesics. And you can just search for those. They're the only things that have those exact words on Instagram: the Garden of Freedom and Big Igloo Geodesics. So we've got a lot of stuff we're doing with the property here. Greenhouses, living walls, earthship style buildings,
One more
wild
time.
beanies.
One more time. What's that Instagram address?
The Garden of Freedom is the one for the property, and Big Igloo Geodesics is, yeah, there it is. The Garden of Freedom. Thank you. Yes, and Big Igloo Geodesics. And I use Instagram like I don't look
Did
at
I
the
spell
feed.
geodesics right?
You got one extra C in there.
Okay, so there's not a this
Yeah.
one.
SI. Yep, that's
All
it.
right.
There you go. Beautiful. Thank you so much, man. That's beautiful. So these are two sort of new businesses of mine that I'm launching. So it's been a long day. Wearing my work boots, recycled from the Marines, and
Reused.
I got
Reduce,
I got
reuse, recycle. You're reusing.
yeah. This is not just for social distancing purposes. When we're doing spray painting out there. So I have I left my glass. I wear like steampunk glasses because they have the little fins on the side,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm cutting conduit with a chop saw with a metal blade, and so it's just throwing out clouds of sparks. So we got a really cool video it better be done by noon tomorrow, and that's when we're launching this thing, and we really want to have this thing put together. So we're getting up early tomorrow to put together the Geosphere #2. And if you go to, by the way, if you go to that account, you can see Geosphere #1. I did a 6-foot geodesic ball that's mounted on so if you come, I live down 3 miles of private dirt road.
Yeah.
And the last quarter mile I built. It's Ma Road. It said like it's Ma, that's the name of the road. Ma Road. I need to get a sign. But I have a stop sign out front, and it says specifically private road, no trespassing, speed limit 5 miles an hour. And and then you come to this little ridge line, and at the ridge line, I have the 6-foot geodesic ball mounted up there, the Geosphere 1, and it's a really cool landmark. And it's a way you get to my house when you see you look to the right, and it's cool because it's a white ball and it's illuminated with spotlights. Although I need to get some more, so it's not in my budget yet. But for upgrades, when I get more money for I love those little solar lawn lights. You do so much with them. Like I also little solar powered lights all over the property, all sorts of different colors and stuff. But at night, the stand on this one is black. And the ball is white, and it's got a coat of glow-in-the-dark paint on top of white paint. And so it glows, and it sort of like sits floating on top of the tree line. It's a really cool visual effect.
Very cool. Yeah, I look forward to checking that out. So let's get right into the presidential thing. You mentioned the COVID corona.
Well, before we do that, you said that the most important thing for people in getting to meet a presidential candidate was to be able to have a beer with them. Well, we're out of beer here, and I do like drinking beer at the end of a long day of construction. But I also carry my little cannabis kit here. I got half a bowl already. I'm gonna keep drinking water because it doesn't dehydrate you like beer.
That's true. Although I don't support Aquafina as a corporation. They're pretty horrible.
Me neither. I don't know.
But
one of the cool things we do here, more importantly, normally I don't support consumption of plastic bottles. We're in a little bit of a weird circumstance with drinking water out here,
right? And
a lot of these were given to us. And instead of just putting them in storage, the reason we're using them is that we reuse these bottles, whether it's whatever brand. You put the cap on it, and anybody who knows Earthship construction knows
very well.
You can take this. You lay it on its side. You put down mortar, and you lay these down. You lay these down on top of your row of mortar, and then you do another row of mortar, another row of bottles, and then you slap your finish on top. And you have a wall where you have like a cinder block effect of a matrix, but the matrix is made with recycled materials, and you can set it up so that you're using less cement, less plaster overall, and you have a more efficient building process. So it's a lot of upcycling.
And we also know that dead air, which is what's inside the bottle, it's dead air, is really great insulation. So that's the point there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Big part of it.
Yeah. So this whole thing has been so surreal with the COVID corona shutdown, and what I find most interesting about it is kind of the social aspects of it, how some people are so bought into the corporate media narrative of like, stay home, wear a mask, and they're just like repeating, flatten the curve, they're repeating all these corporate media things that are being spewed at them 24/7 on all these news channels, which and meanwhile, like I'm reading these reports by actual epidemiologists. I can't say this word. I'm reading these actual reports by epidemiologists.
Everybody's an epidemiologist now. Everybody's an amateur epidemiologist in the era of coronaphobia.
Yeah, it's insane.
And statistician.
Yeah.
And data analyst.
Yeah. or they're just spewing what some other amateur epidemiologist has said. But I'm reading the reports, and they're saying that by doing this shutdown and this lockdown, we're basically making it impossible for herd immunity to take effect, and this might actually be one of the worst possible things we could be doing, even if it was as dire as the media is saying, which of course we know that their numbers have been pretty grossly inflated as far as how dangerous the actual disease is. Typical corporate media fear porn as usual. But I'm very curious. So you're trying to run a presidential campaign during this ridiculousness, and of course I saw, I don't know if, I follow a lot of your social media, so I don't remember if it was Instagram or YouTube or what it was, or Facebook. Somewhere I saw that you said you reposted Donald Trump saying, he has absolute authority, and I was like, short the mustache, short the big bushy Stalin mustache. It was like the most fascist thing I've heard from the White House press corps ever. I mean, in an era where it seems like every single president's been a crazy fascist that we've ever had since my whole life. I was shocked by it. So just talk about that for a second.
Oh man, well this has been the motivation for me to get back on the air, really. Part of it is being on lockdown and not being able to tour and meet people in person like I used to. At least not in a political context, not yet. And I've said from the beginning, I would go out. I would, this wouldn't slow me down at all. No, I'll get it. I'll get it. And if I have to, in order to be polite, while I have it, quarantine for 2 weeks, get it out of the way, and then be back out there and not have to worry about it again. If I could, that's what I'd be doing. And I might have already had it and gotten over it. I took a test and was negative for it and for the antibodies, but with that test, the antibody part of it might not actually show on the test for some time after having gotten over the virus. But either way, I tested negative for active corona, which was disappointing because at least if I had it, I knew okay, I had it, I'm over it. Yeah. There's so much fear porn, as you said, around this. And, the thing that Trump said about the president having total power, fascist isn't the word that I'd use for that. But let me step back. The socialist, right? Is Donald Trump a socialist? Well, socialized medicine, yes. Socialized security, socialized retirement, yes. Socialized welfare services, yes. Supporting all of these. Socialized militarism, socialized defense services, yes. Socialized public safety, yes. Socialized regulation of businesses, yes. All these things that are the status quo of socialism, doesn't oppose, 100% supports, in many ways wants bigger, stronger, more relevant in your life, which is sick. So yes, Donald Trump is not just a passive, I accept the state of the status quo socialist. He is an active socialist looking to increase the socialism of government. When you say fascist, that what he said that you mentioned there about absolute power is not the most fascist thing he has said, because the direct meaning of fascism is the merging of corporate interests and government. And he said what he said on that. He said so many other things that are fascist, but specifically on that count, in a major way recently, he said two things that really have stuck out in my mind. One, we the government are going to buy major chunks of stock of corporations and take charge and ownership of that. Two, a lot of businesses and a lot of restaurants especially are going to close, but don't worry, they'll come back, but some with new owners.
Yeah, that's a nice.
So the state is going to
redistribution of wealth there, huh?
Yeah, the state is going to be deciding a lot of. So what he said though, in saying the president has total power, that's totalitarian.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
He's got the trifecta. He's a socialist, fascist, totalitarian. And what's so disturbing about this, when you understand what it means when the government says we're passing a $2 trillion spending bill or stimulus bill, and we're adding another $4 trillion of liquidity to the market in order to keep the economy from suffering. Normally the government is this sort of fountain of money, and they don't really have that much control over it, but with the Federal Reserve System and the banking system, and most of it is not through government itself, it's through fractional reserve banking. That's the greatest source of money being created out of thin air, right, or digitally created. And it's all based around the federal government's authority. Of course, it's all based on the violence, propping up the Federal Reserve System and the US dollar. And this fountain of money already has huge distortion effects in the market and in your life, which means that resources are diverted away from meeting real human needs and instead go to the corrupt friends of government and government interests. This is why we have cities the way we do today. Yes, we would have cities without this, but when you put a giant fountain of money in New York City, and then you have little spigots connecting to Washington, D.C., and the capital of every state that gets 2 senators, you create this artificial incentive beyond the incentives that we would naturally have with industrialization and modern life for people to live in cities. And right now, there is a trend, like with what we're doing here at the Garden of Freedom, towards decentralization. We see it right now. It's a silver lining to coronaphobia.
Yeah.
People working from home, going remote as much as possible, more efficient, pollution going down. These are good things. But because of government policy, because of the banking system, people are incentivized to keep living in cities in stick frame construction. There's another product of a whole other layer of corruption in the construction industry and the timber industry that I'll spare you. But it's like you peel back the curtain.
I'm very familiar with that one. I used to do construction, so yeah. Believe me, I know all about that one.
But like for example, in the Southwest, here in the Southwest, where traditionally adobe homes, earth mass homes are the norm, we have cities, Phoenix, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, full of Tucson, Flagstaff, full of stick frame houses with fake plaster coverings made to look like adobe.
Yeah.
You know, wait a second. And they're not energy efficient homes because they don't have the earth mass that you would want in this climate.
Yeah.
And there's so many other problems with this. But what's happening around, if you're like me and you already understand all of these evils of the financial ripoff of government and the central banking system, that is the status quo.
And the corporations. The corporations are
right. Of course,
of course. I'm so angry about all of it, but I feel like sometimes I'm like the most angry about corporations because I'm like, they're so blatantly evil sometimes. Like, Monsanto.
Either way,
or Starbucks.
Don't be angry. You got to get past the anger. Either way, anger is the path to the dark side. So when you have this fountain of money, right? You have this normal status quo that is the fountain of money.
Yeah.
And then government says, we're pumping it up. We're another $6 trillion. It's like, whoosh, now the fountain is out of control and the government has even more control over it. Who got their stimulus checks yesterday?
The military.
Good taxpayer. No. Well, did they?
Yeah, the military. Everybody I know in the military got their incentive check immediately. Yeah.
And they're like, that doesn't even make any sense. If the point of it is to compensate for people who lost their jobs, it should only go to the people who actually lost their jobs. Waiters, waitresses, servers, bartenders, hotel staff. All the service industry people who actually lost their jobs, strippers, of course, they need to get stimulus checks, but they gave it to the military first. You know what? And people who are on the tax rolls, good little taxpayers, you get your money first.
Yep.
Good little registered businesses. If you're on under the table businesses like me, no, you don't get $10,000. If you do, $10,000.
Well, and that's the funny thing too. Is it's the inefficiency of the system too, because I've been running a couple of different businesses over the last few years, and so I actually called just to see, because I've got employees and some of my employees are unemployed. So, because of this whole COVID shutdown. So I said, well, maybe I can get them like the payroll benefit, the payroll protection loan or whatever it is. So I figured, okay, I'm going to call the bank and at least see if I'm eligible, how that works. Like, maybe I'm not going to do it because I'm kind of a libertarian. I'm kind of against it from the get-go, but
no, you should do it. That's not a reason. Take money away from government.
Well, I agree with that too. And that's, there was a lot of, I was doing this really with it. But when I went to go call the bank that was authorized to do this process in my area, which is a corporate bank, it's not like Hawaii Federal Credit Union or one of these local little small banks. No, it's like giant corporate bank. That's who does it. And so I called them and I'm on hold for a long time. Then they put me onto somebody else and I'm on hold again. And they put me onto somebody else. And then it goes straight to voicemail. And so I left a message and I haven't heard anything back. It's been like 3 days. So I'm like, So I'm like, okay, first of all, the entire system doesn't work at all. Secondly, of course, it's only the big giant corporations. And that's what's driving me so nuts about this whole thing is all these great little small restaurants, independently owned coffee shops, these great small businesses in Honolulu are all closed. And Walmart is just cranking. Walmart is just, people are coming in and out of that place like nonstop. And I'm just like, we're doing the exact opposite of what we should be doing to our economy by centralizing to these giant evil corporations and just killing all the small businesses. And it's very upsetting for me. But let's talk about the campaign a little bit. I'm sure it's upsetting for a lot of people. Let's talk about the campaign a little bit. So you're running on the Libertarian ticket. And you recently announced that your running mate is John McAfee. Yeah?
Well, to be perfectly clear, we are aspiring running mates. And in the Libertarian Party, the nominee for president and vice president are chosen separately. And
okay.
So we have mutually endorsed each other. And specifically, I've endorsed him for vice president. So if I am the nominee and, no one better comes along, and it's hard to imagine someone better to support me in this, quest to dissolve the federal government than John frickin' McAfee.
I followed him for a long time. I'm a fan of him too. So yeah.
I mean, for one thing, my biggest weakness as a candidate, and a lot of people say, Adam, it doesn't matter. If you don't have the resume, because you're not running to be president, you're running to be bankruptcy agent of the federal government and take it through this process. Okay, yeah, trust me, I get that. If the authority of the president is here, the authority of the bankruptcy agent in following this preordained process is like, 1% or 2% of the relative power. But it's still a major administrative task, and I don't want to undersell it at all. Yeah. And to have someone with John McAfee's corporate experience, and it's not very often that you find someone with that corporate experience with the same fidelity to the non-aggression principle, to the principles of freedom, who has in his own life so beautifully lived the principles of freedom. And it also has the clout and the name ID. And I am so honored and excited to have him backing me up and to back him up, and I think if he was able to be in the United States right now, and if he gets the nomination, it's a really exciting possibility that he would come back and be facing the IRS legally in civil disobedience during that time. So that would be really cool. Like, let's nominate John McAfee so that we have, so we go, come on, John, time to take on the IRS as the Libertarian Party's nominee for vice president. How cool would that be? And, if he was able to run in the primary as I have been here in the U.S. for most of the last few months, I'd be supporting him for the presidency as well, and I'd be dropping and running to be his vice president. And if by some fluke the Libertarian Party nominates him for president, then him and Arvin Vohra and Dan Berman are really the only candidates that I could run with as the VP, because they are actually restructuring government in such a way that holds the ethical line that most of us describe.
So let's talk about the entire libertarian field, the Libertarian Party, where it's at, what the primaries are looking like. Because I'm into it. I was huge into Ron Paul in 2012, and when the Republicans screwed him over, I said, never again will I ever consider any Republican for any office, period. I just, once fool me once, right? And then of course, the Democrats.
You can't get fooled again.
Can't get fooled again.
You can't get fooled again. See what I mean? They got to stay here in Tennessee, right?
What have you ever heard the George W. Bush quote about sovereignty that they asked him at the Native American? He was speaking on a Native American reservation, I think, when he was running for president the first time, and they said, "Can you speak to the sovereignty of the Native American people and what that means in our current standing in the federal government, etc." And he goes, "Well, sovereignty, what that means is you're sovereign. That's what it means."
Yeah.
And there's this long, uncomfortable pause, and then you hear somebody laugh in the background. It's like, oh, so bad. That's my favorite George W. Bush quote among many. But so let's talk about the rest of the libertarian field, though. I'm into it. I'm super into it, and I'm trying to get the data, and I'm trying to come up with good questions to ask you, because I know we had this interview scheduled a couple weeks ago, and I said yeah, let me kind of pre-work the field a little bit and see what I want to talk to him about. And I'm looking it up, and I'm Googling, and I'm DuckDuckGoing, and I'm doing, and I'm using all these search engines trying to figure out what the standing is of the Libertarian Party, who's the front runner, by how much. I mean, and this data just does not exist. I'm an IT guy, and I'm like searching every search engine I can think of, and I'm literally, I have no idea. A lot of people are talking about Hornberger. I guess he's doing fairly well. I have a good buddy of mine who actually went to the debates that were held in California, and he actually sent me a picture of him with you there at the debate. He got a picture with you. He got a picture with Hornberger. He got a picture with Vermin Supreme. And, I was very impressed with his collection of pictures of himself with these libertarian candidates. I thought it was great. But so I mean, give me a little bit of feedback on what you're thinking, what that process looks like, why there's not a website where you can at least see what the current promised delegates are, or I mean, there's literally, it's like a vacuum.
Well, first of all, the main reason for that is because of the nature of the process, which all just got especially wonky with coronaphobia. The old parties are not really affected by this, right? They had sufficient primaries before things got weird to know who their nominees are, and Trump didn't have any serious contenders. Unfortunately, Joe Walsh and Bill Weld were not able to mount significant challenges to him within the Republican Party. And the Democrats have come out decisively for Joe Biden. It's shocking. Yeah, roll your eyes, please do.
It's not it's not even like eye rolling. It's just more like okay, so the other,
it's like my eyeballs hurt just thinking about looking at this part of reality. I've been the Democratic Party.
I've been talking about you and telling friends and family and business associates and other people, like, hey, you got to check out. We have other options besides, because everybody hates Trump and everybody hates Biden. I mean, they're almost universally disliked by everybody I know, except for a few people who have totally drinking the QAnon Kool-Aid, which I just do not buy at all. But anyway, And I keep telling.
What's your take on Q? Hold on. So would you explain to me this? Because I have a friend who reads the news like 10 hours a day, and is super up, and he's super up on Q.
Yeah.
And he really puts a lot of stake in it, and he gives me the overview usually from distance. But what's your take? How do you decisively come to that dismissive conclusion?
There's two or three hard reasons. One is just my statistical analysis of the human race and what I witness in people, and how I think that our most egregious failing is wishful thinking, and how all of this QAnon stuff just like fits perfectly with wishful thinking. So just right away, I'm going to be skeptical. That's going to be my default.
Okay. So just to be clear, it's sort of like the inclination or temptation or trend among Trumpsters to rationalize all of the things he does that they don't like by saying, oh, he's playing 4D chess.
Well, I think that narrative has actually been spun on purpose, probably by somebody either working for Trump or working for the CIA or NSA or something. I don't even know. But I mean, that's my operating theory. I literally have no idea. This is just me winging it. But the things that really make me think that there's no possibility that Donald Trump could be QAnon, or that he could be for the people, or that he's ever going to lock up Hillary Clinton for deleting her email server after being subpoenaed. The thing
right. No, not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen. And I mean, even though anybody else who got subpoenaed and then went and wiped an entire email server would definitely go to jail, at least for obstruction, if nothing else. But yeah, the simple fact is, during the Jeffrey Epstein case, Acosta, the guy who gave Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart deal, Trump promoted him to labor secretary. So how is anybody who's going to be, QAnon, anti-Pizzagate, who is actually going to wrangle up the corrupt, deep state players, going to promote Acosta? That just makes zero. I just can't even playing 7D chess, that move doesn't make any kind of sense for me. And there's a few other things like that. The fact that he was good friends with the Clintons right up until he ran for president. I think he was actually at Chelsea's wedding, like in like one of the first 2 rows or something. I mean, this is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if he's so anti-deep state, anti-Clinton, everything else, which is how he campaigned, then why was he such good friends with him just 6 years ago? Just like there's all of these things don't fit the narrative with the Q thing, and the real thing is I really just feel like it's wishful thinking. People really want to have a hero or a way to believe that tomorrow's going to be better than today, and obviously they're not getting that from either of the major parties, so they're thinking outsider, and then somehow this corporate reality TV star is an outsider, and according to them, it's a lot of wishful thinking. Is my opinion. I don't really know, but that's my guess.
It makes sense.
Yeah. So let's get back to the Libertarian Party. So the primaries, a complete and total. The word I want to use is not family friendly. I'm trying to keep this family friendly. But
So what it comes down to is that the difference with the Libertarian Party is that our nominees are selected by 1,000 delegates at the National Convention who are all super delegates, as the old parties would call them. They are not bound. They can vote for whomever they like. And it really is a more lively process that way. But it also means that we're at a disadvantage in a number of big ways, and that for me personally, right, I'm running the Libertarian Party primary for president. My goal to win that is based on recruiting, organizing, and winning over a majority of those 1,000 delegates, right, to get 500 plus 1.
Yeah.
And with the Democrats and Republicans, because they are so much broader and their primary, it is a messed up system with them too, where the focus is Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and there's priorities where states earlier in the process have more weight in it. But when they go to those states, at least they are campaigning to a much bigger audience, not just the base of their party, but in a lot of these states they have open primaries, and they are also competing in a contested primary for crossover votes.
Yeah.
Anybody, a Republican can, like in this year, for example, if you're a Republican and your sole interest is to ensure that always the most conservative candidate is the president, then there's no point in you registering Republican and voting in the Republican primary because Trump's going to win it anyway.
Yeah.
And instead to go register as a Democrat and vote in the Democrat primary. And in the Libertarian primaries, there's no incentive for that. They're not relevant. And there are a few states that have them, but they're essentially beauty contests.
Right.
So it's sort of a diversion of resources for a Libertarian candidate to do any general population outreach, unless it's to show off. And it should be, in a sense, to show off to the Libertarian Party delegates to say, look, I would be a better candidate because look how good I am at this. And so that's part of what I'm doing now, and doing as many interviews as I can, organizing volunteers to help get us better interviews, producing media, being active on social media.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean?
Oh, no.
I've got like 300 subscribers. Come on, man.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that's what. But no. Always bigger and better interviews. Always like,
of course.
And the field is kind of wide open now. I thought that I would be in a more dominant position at this point, and we haven't had the organizational support. A lot of people who have come to my events over the past couple of years, didn't take the next step to organize themselves to be delegates, but enough of them did that I'm certainly one of the top tier contenders. I think Jacob Hornberger is clearly in the lead at this point, but it's like, nah, I don't know if I want to be in the lead at this point, because there's always some fluctuation in the process, and this year we're seeing a lot. And one of them is that Judge Jim Gray just jumped in, and with Larry Sharp as his running mate, and that John McAfee came out as potentially my running mate, that we're running as a team. There's still a lot up in the air, and that we could have our national convention pushed back to Freedom Fest in July, extending 2 months from where we are now is another possibility. it's really interesting. Although I will say, I think one of the things that plays to my advantage is that I'm not a 70-year-old plus white dude, and that's the of the not 70-year-old plus white dudes. I think I'm the leading contender right now, and
Hey, why you got to knock on Vermin Supreme like that, bro?
yeah, I know. He is. I think. Wait, I think he's under. He's over 60. I forget his exact age.
Well,
But yeah, he's up there too.
I'm gonna lump him in there with the old guys. He's no spring chicken. Although I love his outfit, obviously. So okay, so that's kind of the way that I understood it as well, of the process that's going on. I am upset that there's not a better. I mean, even if there was just a website that showed, like, who was leading somehow. I don't know how you'd pull that metric, which is maybe why there isn't a website.
Yeah. So yeah, it is something that you can't really poll, and because of the nature of it, a lot of the delegates are keeping their preferences to themselves. So like right now, there are only a handful of states in the Libertarian Party that have not had their conventions where they nominate their delegates to national. And even if they all had, and you could get every single one of them on the phone, which you couldn't, a lot of them would tell you deliberately that they are undecided.
Yeah. Well, I just think that if we're going to look at the future of the Libertarian Party, and try to actually win a national election, which I think the country's ready for it by every metric. Everybody hates Trump. Everybody hates Biden. The people who don't are like so brainwashed and like out of the loop that it's like it's not even worth I don't even bother worth talking with them most of the time. But we need something that's compelling. Our little monkey brain needs some kind of graph to look at and be like, oh, look, Jacob Hornberger just got 3 points. Why? And then there's like a media link, Oh yeah, he said this at a press meeting, and we like that, So let's get back to Jacob Hornberger, because like you said, I think he's the front runner. That seems to be my impression too. Although, like I said, there's really no hard data to back that up. What? Obviously, you've got a totally different platform, and I'm a big fan of your platform, and we talked about that a lot during the last interview. And we could talk about it again if you want. But what do you think your biggest difference is from Hornberger? What what if he said, what if we were to come to you tomorrow and say, Adam, I really like everything you've done, and but I want your support for me so that you're not chipping away at my base or whatever, what would he have to concede to you in order to gain that?
Well, I like Hornberger, generally speaking. He's a great advocate for the message. He is a powerful speaker, a strong presence, and it would be a good representation for the party for 2020. And like I've said, for him and for so many others, I'd be happy to organize veterans for Hornberger and retake the debates, like actually protest and shut them down with formations of veterans if that's what we have to. Separate thing there.
Well, let's get back to that, because I'm all about that, but continue.
Yeah, all right. But the thing, and like I said, there are 3 other candidates who I would serve as their running mate, and it's because what they are doing is fundamentally restructuring the government in a way that is on par with what I am proposing, in the sense that, at least, and I still think none of them, we'll get into this, but that they are really taking away the illegitimate power of the institution. So Dan Taxation is Theft Berman saying, okay, taxation is theft. We're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I, as the president, Dan Taxation is Theft Berman, as president, where I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that, and there's a lot I can do, and it's pretty much most relevant things, certainly at the federal level. No tax laws are going to be enforced anymore at all, ever. Boom. The federal government can still be there, but whatever survives this reform has to find a way to fund itself voluntarily. And, I could oversee that.
Yeah.
Arvin Borov, very similarly, is saying that he would be the pardoner in chief, and his standard would be no victim, no crime. And basically, no matter what happened in the federal legal system, if you committed a victimless crime, he would be there to pardon you immediately.
I like that too.
That would include that's in a sense even more inclusive than taxation is theft. All victimless crimes at the federal level go away. So of course, no tax laws are enforceable. So I have intellectually, as practical policy that moves us towards freedom in a meaningful way, I have immense respect for those two gentlemen having come up with a platform like that. John McAfee is pretty much like mine. I mean, he said specifically in his endorsement of me that my platform is closest to his. And if they were the nominees, I'd be happy to serve as their vice presidential nominee. And Jacob Hornberger hasn't done that yet. He hasn't crossed that ethical line. He's good. He's really good. Of the people who haven't crossed that ethical line and said, I am going to institutionally abolish all of the unjust powers of government. He talks about dismantling, and I'm like, dude, you're just talking about elements of my platform that I don't have to sell people on now. Like, that's great. But he still says, I'm going to be president and I am going to maintain this executive power that is fundamentally a violation of the non-aggression principle. And, he still says, like, I believe in the non-aggression principle, but I think it's a compromise with evil that is absolutely unnecessary at this point. But if he came to that and said, Adam, I will make this my standard in policy, either, Arvin's standard or Dan's standard or something in localization, I would love to be Jacob Hornberger's running mate as well.
Okay, cool, very cool. Because I was curious about that because I've followed all of you guys, and I'm a libertarian. I'm into the party. I'm the whole thing. Although I almost rage quit the Libertarian Party when they picked that anti-Second Amendment guy for vice president last time. Oh God, I was so angry. But anyway, Tim something. What was his name? I don't even remember. I can't even say the word. It makes me sick. Anyway, it's in the past. Let's let it go. but so I was curious about what your take is on these other platforms and how they differed. So there's been a lot of drama and talk in the mainstream media. I prefer the term corporate media because that implies that there's money behind it that kind of helps you understand why it's motivated to do what it does. But in the corporate media, they've been talking about, mail-in ballots or voter ID. They've been talking about all these different kinds of things. I have my own thoughts on a way to secure ballots and secure an election that would actually be a lot more legitimate than anything that's happening now. What are your thoughts on that? What kind of help me along with a way to, because I think that our elections have been rigged for a long time. I mean, the exit polls haven't matched the actual election results in a long time. And if that was happening in a third world country, we'd send in peacekeepers to demand a new election. But because it's in America and we have this weird, past.
We set the standard.
We set the low standard for everybody else to trip over. Yeah. It's clear to me that there's something very wrong with our electoral system right now. The whole thing. And definitely I don't trust any of the election results as it is now. But what do you think would be an actual effective measure to solve some of that?
I generally don't concern myself with those kinds of questions.
Okay.
And I'll explain why, because I think it is an important part of my worldview, because I say those types of questions. If there's a knife in your back, do you really want to spend time examining the knife, or do you just want to get it out?
Okay.
And it's sort of, do I want us to have a more effective means of a majority rule democratic system where the majority gets to vote away the rights of the minority? Or do I want to focus on waking people up to the fundamentally unethical nature of the system?
I see what you're saying. All right. But I mean, given that that's where we're at now, it seems kind of like, we have to do something about it at this point. I don't know. That was just my thought is obviously because I'm a blockchain nerd, we could easily have a verifiable blockchain voting system.
Well, yeah, no, and right, and a big part of what I'm advocating actually in my transition is to give the VA to veterans, privatize the VA. I give every veteran in America one ownership voting share, and we get to vote on a blockchain. And we have the technology. It's not complicated. It'd be very easy to set it up and have it be completely transparent.
Yeah.
The thing is, when you say, let's convince the government to have an honest, transparent voting system, that's like saying, hey, let's have the mafia, pay their employees more. You should pay your hitmen more fairly. Like, who cares? The ethical premise of the question is false.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying on that. So, I was talking to a bunch of people, people that I work with, and friends of mine and family and stuff like that. And I asked them what they would want to ask a presidential candidate. And so I've got this list here. And you can just say pass if you're not interested, or you can say I've got an idea of some kind of policy that might help. But I'm just going to go through them here. A lot of people are talking about the homeless. What are your thoughts on the homeless?
One of the most disturbing statistics in America is that we have more empty homes than we have homeless people, and we still have millions of homeless people. That is not a product of the market. That is not a product of efficient use of economic resources. That is not the product of a compassionate society. That is a product of a society that trusts major economic decisions to the government, to bankers, and major string pullers in corporate America, and this is the inevitable consequence. We are one of the most generous societies, countries on earth, really one of the most compassionate and capable of helping people, and the fact that we fail so miserably is an absolute travesty. And I can point out a lot of things that government is doing to make the problems of poverty and homelessness worse. And I don't want to pretend to be a central planner who has all of the solutions for every single community in America, because that's a big part of how we got into the mess in the first place. Trusting people who said, give me the power in DC and I'll come up with policy that's going to solve problems for Americans all across the board. But regardless of what you think the answer is to this, I know that we are going to have a better time addressing this without the federal government in the way, with at least states and local governments being more empowered to have customized solutions. And that's really the ultimate goal of localization, the premise of my platform. Take governments apart from the top down, get them all the way down to the community level, and then at the community level, they are transparent, accountable, and customized to meet your needs based on your values. And the community,
even more important than transparent and all that, they're motivated. Nobody at the federal government is motivated at all. They don't give two winks about the homeless people all over the streets of Honolulu. But believe me, at the Honolulu City Council, they're talking about the homeless problem. So, yeah. All right, cool. That's so another one that came up a lot, and there's a group already who's kind of like really backing you for pursuant to this is custody battles, child support, parental alienation. We've got 17 million kids in this country who don't have access to one of their parents.
This is the Victims of Family Law Coalition, Victims of Family Law for Kokesh, being organized primarily by our friend Chris Cole out of North Carolina, and he does an amazing job. And I wish I could say it's a group behind me. There are a number of activists within the parental rights community who are getting behind this campaign because they know, one, I'm the only one who's talking about this. And again, it's one where I don't pretend to have all the answers, but in terms of the major overarching legal and regulatory and financial framework that goes into this, getting rid of the federal government burden is the first step to really addressing so many of these family law travesties that are now accepted as a part of normal life. If everybody who saw themselves as a victim of family law got over the shame and the bullying and said, you know what, I am a victim here and I need to come out and tell my story. Everybody who's been through a bad divorce, who has been in a family with a bad divorce, been a child of divorce like myself, have been worried about their children being taken away from them because their neighbor saw them smoking pot, inheritance issues, all of these ways that government fucks up what a role of a dispute arbitrator or resolution service should be in these situations, just lays it bare. And custody battles are the worst. And I see so many Americans' lives destroyed. My parents went through a big, nasty divorce when I was 10 years old. And it was, the major trauma of my childhood.
Yeah.
Now to see that we need more activists in this sphere. We need more family law rights activists. We need more parental alienation activists, equal rights, equal parenting rights activists. This is a place where America is really suffering needlessly.
I completely agree with everything you said there. One of the things that struck me about it, that I find so interesting is it's one of the few legal realms where all of your inalienable constitutional rights are just like completely gone, just gone. Like
no due process.
There's no due process. There's no one of the first lines in the Constitution is like right to a speedy trial or whatever, right? You could sign up for a custody evaluation or a custody change, and it'll take like years. Literally years. By the time you actually get in front of a mediator or a judge, the kid's grown up already. And then another was a jury of your peers. There's no jury in a family court thing. There's just a judge, and the judge is generally just trying to get the paperwork from one side of the desk to the other in as quick as a fashion as they can. They don't care about you. They don't care about the kids. They don't care about anything. You're just like, get the paperwork over there and get out of here and get the next one. It's just so okay. Next question.
This might be the most under discussed issue relative to the cost on society and the personal tragedy that it represents for so many people.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's way worse than the war on drugs or anything. I mean, this is and that's a huge epidemic. So I mean, it's
up there. It's definitely under discussed. Certainly more under discussed than the war on drugs.
And because it's so causal, a lot of these people who do get addicted to opium and become alcoholics and die in drunk driving accidents and all these things, a lot of them are they've already been victimized by this process. So it's one of those kind of root causes that leads to a whole lot of these other problems that we've got, homelessness, everything else. Yep. All right. Yep. A lot of people mentioned healthcare when I gave them that question. They mentioned some aspect of healthcare. Now you mentioned the VA thing already. I thought that was interesting, and definitely. Yeah. I can't imagine a situation where we can make the VA system worse. So I'll give you that. But what do you think about like the healthcare for everybody else and what that looks like?
Well, first of all, with the VA, it came to me not only as a veteran myself, but as someone who's had friends commit suicide. And Marines who I served with, and to know that the veteran suicide epidemic is a national embarrassment.
17 a day, right?
It was 22, and then 17, and then 20, and I know it's a highly underreported number.
Yeah.
And that's when a veteran gets drunk and wraps his car around a tree.
Yeah, they don't call it a suicide, even though maybe it was heading down a bad path. Yeah.
It's and the VA is still passing out suicide pills.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for reforming the VA, no holds barred. Give it back to us. I shouldn't say back. Give it to us. It's never belonged to us. Give it to the veterans.
Yeah.
Get the pharmaceutical companies, the politicians, the bureaucrats, the special interests out of the way. End the drug war. Give us the right to exercise our freedom to at least medicate how we see fit. And it's not just cannabis, but MDMA and psilocybin are also extremely promising treatments.
The studies I've read in the last couple of years on psilocybin are just amazing. It's like you could take somebody who's like literally suicidal, depression, manic depressive, violent, and all of a sudden they're like happy and nice, and it was like a few experiences. It's not like a daily thing. They literally did it a few times, and they're just like instantly quality of life is way better. It's
it's something else. So hold on, I want to answer your question though. I'm not trying to avoid it because I want to bring it back. When you look at the VA now, when you think about when you hear Medicare for all, you should think VA for all. Suicides, wait times, bad bureaucracy, and shitty treatment.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who want the comfort of socialized medicine. I understand the temptation.
Yeah.
For people who want to be able to pool their risk at the community level or with an insurance service mechanism, you're going to have that without the corruption, without the drug war, without the kickbacks and all. I mean, the FDA has killed 40-something million people with their manipulation of the process of drug approval. Just with that. It is really sick, and that is from Dr. Mary Ruwart. I encourage people to look her up.
How do you spell that?
Ruwart, Dr. Mary Ruwart. And but without going down that sidetrack for too long, just to say, look, that we localize the decision-making process in healthcare. We're going to have at least whatever a community wants to have. They're going to have it in an efficient, effective, transparent, and not nearly as corrupt way as we have now.
Well, you mentioned with the VA getting rid of you gave a whole list of special interests. You didn't mention specifically insurance companies, but boy, would I love to get rid of the enormous waste and drag on society that insurance companies are.
Right. Well, hold on. I wouldn't say Yes and no, in the sense that insurance plays an important role in a free society in mitigating and pooling risk. It's a legitimate function. And you are absolutely correct to point out that insurance companies represent a major part of the evil of the current healthcare system, but they are entirely products of a corporate regulatory environment set up by the federal government. They are not free market insurance companies. They are not set up to meet the needs of the people. They are not accountable to their customers. They are accountable to government and major corporations, and it is really fucked up that we have, as a society, as a species, the ability to pool risk, that we can have this peace of mind that comes with insurance. That is amazing, and yet we don't have that because of how bad the government intervention in the insurance industry is. You can't buy, you can't get good car insurance. No. You can't at a fair price.
No.
I mean, you can get good insurance if you pay ridiculous amounts for it. But then, why would you? You get to the point at which you would just keep your money. But then we don't, because as you said, they represent a huge. And it's not just the inefficiency. There really is a manipulation and a misdirection of economic resources within the healthcare industry towards things that make money under the system rather than meet human needs. And if you had a free market system, at least that mechanism able to direct those resources, they would go to meet human needs, not the needs of special interests or in ways that respond to a regulatory framework where boner pills are cheap and heart medication is expensive.
Good point. I like the closing shot there. That's good. So another thing that a lot of people are talking about, and that's certainly one of my main focuses, and which is why I do shows like this, why I try to put out content, is how absolutely destructive the corporate media has become to everything, especially the psyche, not just the collective psyche, but the individual psyche of all American people. It's you know, I mean, there's some people I know who are just walking around in like a scared rage / you know, ignorant fog of like, you know, and it's because they're just watching CNN all day, and they're just so mentally unhealthy because they're watching CNN all day. And what do you yeah, give me your thoughts on the evils of corporate media, and how we could better incentivize decentralized independent media, how we can take the keys away from the bad actors that have been running the show for so long.
How much time do we have?
All the time you got. You're the boss. Just throw out a couple sentences.
Well, I always tell people in interviews when I'm asked to sign off at the end, and because 95% of the interviews I do are some kind of truly independent media.
Yeah.
Non-corporate media. Although that's not fair either. Like I don't even like the term non-corporate. But independent is an independent of the major system, independent of the two-party system, independent of the establishment bias. I think independent is a better term. And I'm a huge tech optimist. One way or another, we render government obsolete within our lifetimes. We're going to live a lot longer than anybody before us, like scales longer. You got 10 good years left on your meat sack. You're not going to die of old age unless you choose to.
Yeah.
That's where life extension technology is, what we're on the verge of. Congratulations, you made it. That's a really important thing to know. But with where we are now, this technology really means nothing without deliberate, active engagement. And it's not new technology. What you and I are doing right now with, yes, it's cutting edge. I'm doing this on a very modern cell phone. You're using the latest video production technology. But and of course, we're using the internet to distribute it.
I'm using Linux. It's all open source. Everything I do is 100% open source. So,
well, the basic capability of what we were doing, or what we're doing now, has been around for a couple decades.
Yeah.
And we're still realizing the potential of it. And if you watch shows like this or any other independent media, and you then go and buy mainstream corporate products from Walmart, and I do that too. I try to minimize it.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of what I'm developing here with the Garden of Freedom.
Yeah.
The off-grid independent lifestyle, building my own housing, getting away from consumerism. And I'm not against living as richly as possible, and consumerism. I'm not completely anti-consumerism, but certainly what we know it as now is mindless consumerism, thoughtless consumerism. Trust me, I'll bring this back to the media part.
Yeah.
But if you listen to shows like this or watch shows like this, and then go out and buy mainstream corporate products,
Starbucks, Walmart.
Yes. You're sponsoring the system. You might as well be watching shit mainstream media too. And it is really important, not just that you economically divest as much as you can from that system, buy Bitcoin, use cryptocurrency, but also to actively support shows like this. If you're all the way through this interview and you've enjoyed it, don't just share it. Figure out a way to support this production financially. But
I'm okay if anybody shares it.
Yeah, no, and it really, if that's not part of it for you, just share it, and don't just go to the Drudge Report. And I use Drudge Report; it's great. But look at some other aggregator sites that better represent you. I like freedomsphoenix.com. Be an active consumer. I'm so shadow banned. If you looked at my numbers, you know what I mean, on YouTube especially.
I'm very familiar with it.
I think the most shadow banned channel on YouTube, where I have over 250,000 subs and sometimes get 500 views a video, and it's like,
yeah. Or my favorite is when you have 2,000 views, right, and then 400 comments, like as if 1 in 4 people left a comment. Like it's like, and then like 800 likes. It's like, how did I get 800 likes with only 2,000 views? Like that many people like took the time to go over there and hit the little thumb. Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because the internet started out as this beautiful tool of transparency, and since major corporate power, like YouTube was an honest company to begin with.
YouTube was rad in the early days. It was so rad in the early days.
It's not that it was just rad, but it was that you could trust it.
Yeah.
You could trust it as a platform.
Yeah.
To be fair and open and not really biased or of significant censorship. Same thing with Facebook, although it naturally morphed on its own. YouTube got bought by Google.
Well, there's a lot of evidence that Facebook was started as an interior CIA NSA project.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah.
Oh, yes. No. And how did we lose Tom and MySpace?
Yeah.
Right?
What happened to Tom?
He was everybody's friend.
Yeah. It was a little what was this pose he was doing?
Yeah. No, I haven't. I've glanced at those conspiracy theories around Facebook. I don't think there's a
you can follow the
body
money
of decisive evidence.
Oh, absolutely there is. The money's there. They got all their seed funding from giant military industrial complex.
Oh yeah. Oh no. There's that sort of obvious in the open nature of a conspiracy behind Facebook, right?
Yeah.
But is there? Well, yeah. I mean, to what extent there was greater behind the scenes manipulation, or Zuckerberg, was set up, or is he just controlled opposition?
He's a hired hand. I mean, it's
again. Why look at the knife in your back?
Yeah.
Imagine if all the time that we, and I don't just mean you and me, but every independent media producer has spent bitching about Facebook, instead spent that time building blockchain social media.
Yeah,
we'd have it by now.
Well, they're working on it. Vitay's got a pretty exciting idea about some of that stuff,
yeah,
and there's other ones too, but.
I'll let the people who are better at that stuff than me worry about that. That's okay.
Okay. So, and another question that I had from a lot of people, they said, okay, first of all, some people are like, I've never heard of this guy, because you're not on corporate media, right? So that's so kind of tangentially connected to the previous question. Why haven't you been interviewed by Joe Rogan? Why won't some of these other, media channels?
I was on Joe Rogan.
You were on Joe Rogan?
It was 6 years ago.
You were on Joe Rogan 6 years ago. So, but this is like before Joe Rogan was like as huge as he is now, obviously.
Before, are you saying that he sold out?
I'm not saying that, but I'm thinking it.
Didn't he endorse Bernie Sanders?
I thought that he sold out as soon as he got rid of Eddie Bravo. I was like, that's it. He's done. He's gone mainstream corporate because Eddie Bravo was like the rad conspiracy theorist guy who was kind of keeping him into like the woke, reality that I think some of us actually who do the research are aware of, and once he got rid of Eddie Bravo, it was like, for me, it was just like straight boom, number one iPod, number one on iTunes, and everything else happened like instantly. So I'm not saying I don't know what the chicken and the egg there is, but I'm guessing.
Oh man, we could go forever on that, man. I'm getting at the end of my voice.
Yeah.
At the end of my bowl. And my wife is waiting for me to wrap this up. So you tell me, man. How do you want? Do you want to do a lightning round, or you want to go to big topic?
I'm at my last question that I got from people
in the
street.
All right, how about that? Let's do it.
So the other thing is that a lot of people said, okay, if he gets any traction and he does radically want to like improve our lives and dismantle all the corrupt, evil state and corporate horrible things that are going on, they're going to kill him.
Okay.
Like they killed JFK, like they killed RFK, like they killed so many other people. So So what are you doing about that? What are your thoughts about that?
I became prepared to die for what I believe in a long time ago, and that's all you ever have to do when you know that you are putting your life on the line for a righteous cause.
All right. All right. Well,
Every
Adam.
now and I guess every now and then I check in and go, is what I'm doing worth dying for?
Yeah.
And I've never told myself anything other than fuck yes.
All right. All right, Adam Kokesh, man. It's great to talk to you again. Thanks for taking the time. The last interview I thought went really well. And I played that speech, the one that's on YouTube of you from 2008 with like the orchestral music behind, and it's like real passion and impassioned speech and with the music and everything. And I as soon as the speech was over, I spun my Linux cube over to another desktop, and I tried to watch Joe Biden speak for a minute. And I really want to impassionately recommend that everybody do that little exercise. Listen to Adam Kokesh speak for a minute, and then spin over and try to listen to Joe Biden speak for a minute, and tell me honestly, to my face, that Joe Biden is a better choice than Adam Kokesh, because that is just amazing.
Do it for Trump too.
Yeah, do it for Trump too. But I mean, the Biden difference is even bigger, but Trump's pretty bad too. All right, Adam, thanks so much, man. It's a great interview. I'm gonna post this on YouTube right now, and I'll link you on Twitter, everywhere else. So have a great night, and tell your wife thank you for the whole country.
And remember, the main website is thefreedomline.com. Peace
All right,
and love, y'all.
take it easy, Adam. Bye.